Thank you. Sir, pledge allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Osborne,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Lund,
Here.
Euler,
Here.
Kushner.
Here. And approval of city council minutes.
Move to approve.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. Adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. And next we have a proclamation with West Central Independent Living Solution Wills for their 25th anniversary celebration proclamation. Y'all come on up. This is where you get to participate. Okay, West Central Independent Living Solutions 25th Anniversary Celebration Proclamation. Whereas West Central Independent Living Solution, WILS, has served people with disabilities of all ages in Benton, Henry, Johnson, Lafayette, Pettis, and Saline counties since 1997. It's celebrating its 25th year anniversary and recognizes the 32nd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. And whereas, as a Missouri Center for Independent Living, WILS is a consumer-driven nonprofit resource center that empowers people with disabilities to take charge of their lives and live as independently as possible by offering core services of information and referrals, advocacy, peer support, independent living skills, and life transitions. And whereas 51% of the staff and board of directors are persons with disabilities, fostering a "we are who we serve" culture. And current leadership includes WILS Executive Director, having problems with words tonight.
You're good. It's a long one.
Deb Hobson, and WILS Board of Directors include Bob Crone, President, Ron Williams, Vice President, Barbara Mayfield, Treasurer, Christy Millen, Secretary, Ashley Herr, Member, and Dave Dufresne, Member. And whereas WILS also offers many additional programs like consumer directed services, accessible transportation, assistive technology demos, claim Medicare counseling, and youth services. And whereas, according to the prevalence of people with and without disabilities for within WILS service area 2020 census, the disability population of Johnson County's total population of 54,150 listed 6,402, or 11.8% of persons with a disability, and of that number, 5,619 are veterans. And whereas through community education and advocacy, WILS works to encourage the removal of architectural and attitudinal barriers to allow full inclusion of individuals with disabilities in community life. WILS envisions a community where all individuals can participate fully without barriers. And whereas the city of Warrensburg is proud to proclaim its continued dedication and fostering equal access and demonstrating commitment to full inclusion of people with disabilities, and reaffirms its desire to be known as the most inclusive community in the United States of America, declared on April 25th, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Jim Kushner, Mayor of the City of Warrensburg, and the Warrensburg City Council applaud the exemplary work of West Central Independent Living Solutions and convey the heartiest congratulations and best wishes upon a successful observance of its 25th anniversary celebration.
That was awesome.
Oh, there you go. Yep. And you've already got the copy, right?
Yes.
Bill?
Oh, sorry.
everybody.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
evening.
Here.
Okay, next we have a presentation from Miss Barbara Carroll, Jane Heben, and Northside Christian Church for the Berg Home Repair presentation.
Good, ask Jane and the representatives to come on forward. They have a short presentation they're gonna make, but we wanted to put this on the agenda this evening. This is a group that's helped the community for several years now. And recently did an exciting project with Jane, that Jane facilitated the connection between the two groups. And we wanted to bring some attention to that project so that if others are interested in helping or doing similar projects, we could get them connected with homeowners as well. So at this point, have Jane, go ahead and.
Hi, as a code enforcement inspector, a lot of times I have groups, whether they're fraternities, sororities, religious groups, or even civic groups that want to help pick up trash, which I love. I love that. But starting last year, I had a fraternity, TKE, that was willing to do more than that. And then this year with Northside, even more than that, where they wanted to help families or people that had homes that were in violation, but because of health issues or physical limitations or even finances, weren't able to do that. Stepped in and assisted with that. And all I was simply connecting those people with those groups. Northside has made a commitment to do this once a month with the family, which is huge. So I'd like to present Sid Tiller and Stephanie Labar.
Thanks for the opportunity to share. We are glad to be here. Stephanie's done all the hard work. I'm just a mouthpiece. But we, since 2018, we've been convicted that too many churches and Christians are known for what they're against and what they're for. And we thought that Christians should be great citizens and good neighbors. And so we've done all kinds of things in that regard. We encourage our people to use their resources to make the lives of others better around them. And we do that both individually challenging folks, and then lately we've been doing this in a corporate way with projects that we're talking about tonight. And we intend to continue to do that. So for the Berg, it's something that we want to be contagious. Maybe you've seen our bumper stickers and different publicity efforts. Stephanie's our communications director, and she's trying to make sure we get that message out, but it is not restricted to us. We want it to be contagious. We want everybody to catch that virus, if you will. And so we're trying to do that. We look to have partners. We are partnering with the city of Warrensburg, the Parks and Rec Department. We look for different folks that can give us opportunities, that need labor, that need resources. And we then will provide those folks, will provide resources as we can. We sound the call for volunteers, and then we sometimes will solicit financial contributions as well to make sure that we can do the work to make the lives better of those around us. So some of our recent projects, we 1 month, it's July or August, we every Saturday we cleaned up a section of Business 50 or the main street there, and I was able to do several of those. Enjoyed that. This home improvement project is what we were just talking about. As you can see, we brought that house up to code. Had a great volunteer effort. One Saturday is all it took, and they got it up to code, and we want to be able to do that for others. Then yesterday we had a Heroes for the Bird day after our last service, where we had inflatables and lunch, and we encouraged our first responders to come and be honored. We honored them during the services, and then invited their families. And a big part of this is there's nothing we ask for in return. We do these things not expecting anything from folks, and we wanted them just to know we appreciate them, appreciate their servants' hearts. to make our lives better, to take care of us when we have a fire or a police emergency. And so we wanted to honor them. And this is the third time we've done that. It happened yesterday, so when I actually have pictures, current pictures of that. And then for the new school year, we collected a lot of backpacks and school supplies for kids and made those available to our students. So all of those things we do, and we were looking for new ideas. If any of you have ideas, but as I say, we were glad to share this with you, and we would be glad to answer any questions as well, if you have them.
I don't have a question, but I do have a statement.
Okay,
Thank you for doing what you're doing.
thank you. Appreciate it.
If people had wanted to help donate but couldn't help, who should they get a hold of?
They just, Kelly Burchett's our financial secretary. But if you just get it to the church and make sure you denote it for the Burg, then we'll make sure those funds go to those projects.
We also have a website for fortheburg.com where you can give financially, and then you can see like our current projects we're working on. And we also support other community projects that we may not be directly involved with, but those opportunities are also on that website as well.
Okay, thank you.
And can you go to the website if you want to volunteer your time or?
Yes, yeah, all of our sign up stuff is there on that website.
Sounds like a great deal.
Thank you. Yeah, we have, in the past, we've also collected donations for other agencies, organizations that are doing good too, and we give them those monies. So we want to be part of the team, part of the team of citizens in Warrensburg making a difference.
Well, from the looks of it, you have been. So congratulations and thank you, and we'll keep pushing.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, 7-1, public hearing on an ordinance amending section 27 of the city code of city ordinances of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding non-residential land use references. Barbara?
This is an ordinance that our city planner, Kristen Dyer, brought forward to me. There are a couple sections of our zoning ordinance that have references to land use codes. And at the time that that was written, those numbers in the table of uses, all the different codes stopped at 27. When we added medical marijuana uses, those uses went up past 27 into the 28s. So things such as you see in here, what site plan requirements and off-street parking requirements stop at 27 when really we have land use codes to 28. So we wanted to clean that up and get those numbers pushed out to what they are now in the 28s. However, in order to prevent this from happening again in the future, as we amend the ordinance at future times, we've just suggested the language, all subsequently adopted land use groups, so that hopefully we catch them automatically in the future when we update the table of uses and would add any future land uses at the end of the table. So it doesn't change any requirements, just changes these references in 2 sections of the code. Be happy to answer any questions on that. Planning and zoning did recommend at their meeting last week, and there were no public comments at that time.
Okay. Anybody wish to speak upon this? Council? Okay, hearing is closed. We'll open a second hearing. Planning or public hearing on an ordinance regarding non-conforming status of master plan residential development.
So this is an interesting situation that the city finds itself in that currently we have in our zoning ordinance provisions for planned unit developments, PUDs, and those have been on the books for some time, since the early to mid 90s. The idea behind a planned unit development is that you could have a project of a certain size that might want to dedicate open space, have open land use, green space, other community amenities, and then offset that with some density bonuses so that you might have housing clustered in one area to protect an area and a natural green area. We have several projects that have been developed under that those sets of guidelines, the PUD standards. So Savannah Commons is a PUD. There is one section of Country View, the Country View Villas, which is just one street with duplexes on it. A cul-de-sac street, that's a PUD. Caleb's Place out by Hawthorne is a PUD. And even Lake Ridge subdivision is a PUD that was developed out in the county and then brought into the city when it annexed. Until a conversation with Randy White, the realtor, a few years ago, I thought that's all the planned developments we had in town. But we have one I never knew about called Silverthorne, which is down on Deer Run near Mitchell Street and Mitchell and Renway, Deer Run, that area. It sits on the east side of Deer Run, just south of Renway. And it's a very attractive little development, and it was developed in the mid-80s under an ordinance 2101 that was adopted in 1983 by City Council that set forth residential planned districts. And so when the city adopted its PUD requirements in the 90s, it did not grandfather in those residential planned districts. And so Silverthorne is the only one of those I'm aware of at this point. But since I went 20 some years without knowing about it, I don't hold out that there might not be another out there somewhere. So without being grandfathered in, if those units, and there are 7 or 8 of them, probably 8 of them, I would say, if any one of them, and they're individually owned by individual property owners, so they're duplexes, and then each site is owned by an individual. If any of them were to sustain damage beyond 75% of the fair market value immediately prior to the damage, they could not repair that side of the duplex or the entire structure if the whole structure suffered damage without coming into compliance with our current codes. That's going to be impossible for them to do because they wouldn't be able to meet your modern PUD requirements because of the open space requirements and the green space requirements. And they only control 1/2 of one duplex. So they couldn't come into compliance with just your regular zoning requirements because of things like we don't have 0 lot line setbacks except for under those PUD standards. So it would basically render them useless and they could not rebuild. Staff has discussed this for several years and is prepared at this point, the ordinance you have in front of you that will basically grandfather them in and allow them to be rebuilt under the standard which they were originally approved. So they would still need to meet that residential planned district standard adopted in 1983, but they would not have to meet your 2022 PUD standards. So going forward, if we adopt other PUD standards in the future or planned districts or some other name, it would allow Savannah Commons to be rebuilt under the code in which Savannah Commons was approved. That only speaks to zoning. That does not change building code. It does not change fire code. Doesn't change any public works code. So any of those modern day requirements would still be incumbent upon them. They would still have to follow those. This ordinance only touches chapter 27, only touches your zoning requirements. So things like setbacks is the big one, open space, parking, density, those types of requirements. It does have a provision that if such a, in the future, if a project is approved as a PUD, but nothing is built, then after 10 years of no action, they would have to come into compliance with the future rules. They would not continue to be allowed to go under the old rules if nothing is built within that first 10-year window. Happy to answer any questions. Planning and zoning looked at it last week and recommended approval. I know we have two realtors / one project, certainly one other realtor very interested who has some properties in there concerned what would happen if there was a fire or tornado or something like that without this law being approved.
Questions? Anybody out there? Anybody on Zoom or here? Okay. We'll close that hearing. Next is ordinances, and we will start with the first and second reading ordinance, section 8.1. First and second reading on an ordinance amending section 27 of the Code of City Ordinances of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding non-residential land use references. Nothing else?
Recommend approval.
Move to second reading by title.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
An ordinance amending section 27 of the Code of City Ordinances of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding non-residential land use references. This is for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. 8.2, first and second reading of an ordinance regarding non-conforming status of master planned residential district developments. Me and words tonight.
Recommend approval.
Motion.
Move to second reading by title.
Yeah, do we do that?
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes,
And, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, that was me.
An ordinance amending section 27-28B of the Code of City Ordinances of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding non-conforming status of master planned residential developments for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
Thank you.
8.3, first and second reading of an ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute an agreement with Insight Public Sector for fire department iPad tablets and associated hardware. Chief Jennings.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. Before you tonight, the ordinance is to execute a contract to purchase iPads for the fire department. Originally, this year, we had budgeted to replace our current onboard computer systems with a Surface style tablet. As we evaluated it more, a lot of our app-driven stuff wasn't compatible with those. We began to take a different route with an iPad solution. That quickly exceeded that original budget. So as we discussed it, we qualified for some ARPA funding, and it seemed to be a good avenue to consolidate our current systems and get a solution that was going to work for us. So before you tonight, that ordinance, I respectively request first and second reading so we can get moving on that, get those products ordered.
Move to pass that ordinance, second reading by title.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute an agreement with Insight Public Sector for fire department iPad tablets and associated hardware. This is for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. Oh, 8.4, another first and second reading of an ordinance. First and second reading of an ordinance amending Article 4 of Chapter 28 Wildlife Management.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. A few months ago, we passed Article 4 of Chapter 28 for wildlife management, authorizing managed deer hunts within inside city limits. We set out standards for what would guide that and regulate that hunt. One of the things that we put in there was no hunting within 150 yards of any street or public right of way or any dwelling or other structure. As we were looking at this measure and we were working with the university had put in their regulations 50 yards and we had looked at 150 feet. So different iterations. We included the combination of the two measures. We have a very good team of hunters who reviewed that for us and shared with us that 150 yards would really limit where we could hunt on city property, and it was not necessary to have that distance, because with using archery equipment, it would be nearly impossible to shoot an arrow 150 yards. So we are respectfully requesting a first and second reading to amend that ordinance to be 150 feet.
Move to pass that ordinance second reading by title.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
First and second reading. Oh, excuse me. It is first and second reading of an ordinance amending Article 4 of Chapter 28 Wildlife Management. This is for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 8.5. First and second reading of an ordinance authorizing a contract with Parks and Recreation Board for facility and grounds maintenance.
Thank you again, Mayor. At the August 31st Parks and Recreation Board meeting, city staff presented a proposal to the Parks and Rec Board to bring Park Maintenance Division underneath the Public Works Department. The impetus behind trying to bring Park Maintenance Division under Public Works is to deal with some of the instability that we've seen in the Parks Operations Superintendent role. Since 2021, we have not had someone who has been consistently serving in that role. Additionally, we have had quite a bit of turnover in those Park Maintenance Worker 1 and Park Maintenance Worker 2 positions. And so with the recent resignation of the current that was effective immediately, Parks Operations Superintendent, myself and Assistant City Manager Enrico Villegas, we talked with Danielle Foster, the Parks and Rec Director, and felt like this would be a good opportunity for us to share resources and see some economies of scale in the maintenance that we provide, as well as have some strong leadership and direction that we see in our street maintenance division and our cemetery division, some of the strong maintenance values that we've seen in those two areas, and hope to share those with our Parks and Recreation maintenance as well. After lots of discussion with the Parks and Recreation Board, the Park and Rec Board, the ordinance 5-1. And so tonight it is before you all for first and second reading of an ordinance. It is required to be passed by ordinance since this was not originally. We will be transferring funds from the park funds that are collected through their mill levy and through their sales tax. We will be transferring those funds to general fund to help us cover the cost of what it will be to administer park maintenance under Public Works. So, happy to answer any questions.
Move said ordinance to be passed by a second time.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to enter into a contract with Warrensburg Parks and Recreation Board for the provision of facility and grounds maintenance. This is for adoption or rejection. Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Okay, number 9, second reading of an ordinance, second reading ordinance adopting fiscal year 2023 budget beginning October 1, 2022. Marcel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is the second reading of the fiscal year 23 budget that was presented at the August 22nd meeting in detail. I've given a recap of the total revenues and expenditures projected for each of the funds in the council letter, along with the slide presentation that was given to you on the 22nd of August, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Move
Move to pass that ordinance.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. Okay, moving on to number 10, other business. 10.1, resolution approving managed hunt program for 2022 deer season.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is the final action that City Council will need to take action on for us to move forward with a managed deer hunt program for the 2022 deer season. We have already adopted the necessary ordinances, but that ordinance does require City Council to approve annually a resolution. So we, well, first of all, I want to extend a big thank you to a few folks who are on city staff. I do want to thank one, Danielle Foster, who has been very instrumental in helping us pull together this deer hunt, as well as who's developed some of these maps and has worked very much on the implementation side. I also want to thank Fire Captain Ryan Smith. I want to thank Building Inspector Justin Wine. I would also like to thank Project Manager Jason McCarty in Public Works, and I would also like to thank Lieutenant Mike Fiddler in the Police Department. All of those individuals sat down with Danielle and I and reviewed the program that we have put forward for you all this evening. Had a lot of really good suggestions that we incorporated into the program that you will have had an opportunity to review and approve tonight. So just want to say a big thank you to those individuals. So for the proposed hunt that we will be looking at, we will be holding it from December 1st through January 15th of 2023. We will be issuing 33 permits. We will open up applications on Thursday, September 15th. We are charging a $20 application fee. The reason for the $20 application fee is to make sure that we have serious hunters who are interested in applying for this. We don't want anyone who is just, just applying to kind of decrease the chances for folks who are really looking at wanting to participate in this if they don't have other opportunities elsewhere, whether that's on private land or in other public hunts. So we want to have that $20 application fee also to help us cover our administrative costs and some additional signage that we will have. As you'll recall, we are going to be closing the areas that are designated for hunting will be closed to the public during this time. So we'll need to put some signage up for that as well. It will be open. Eligible folks to apply will be Warrensburg residents, as well as city employees and their spouses and or dependents. So we will do a random drawing for those who will be selected. And then there will be an additional $10 permit fee if you are selected to hunt. You will be required to attend a pre-hunt orientation to go over the rules and regulations that we have outlined. So Gary, would you mind pulling up those maps and we'll kind of walk through the areas that we have designated for hunting? So we have designated approximately 10 acres per hunter. So we have 4 in Colt Park, 2 in Mar Park. We will have, let me scroll down, we will have 7 in Cave Hollow, 2 at the wastewater treatment plant. We will have 6 at the Hawthorne properties, 2 at the lagoon. We will have 1 on that city-owned property along Pine Street. So that's a very narrow space. And so we feel like that's really only room for 1 person there, as well as 1 at the former East sewer plant over on Montserrat. And you'll notice in those maps, there's a little area of blue there. That's where we have designated where parking will be. So as one of the many regulations and rules that we have set out here, folks will have to park in that designated parking areas. They are not allowed to drive into the parks with their trucks or ATVs or use any kind of motorized vehicle. And this also includes when they are removing their harvest from there as well. They will be required to either packet out using the buddy system, or if there's a cart that they can use as well to bring that. One of the challenges that we did run into kind of in the final weeks here of putting together this program, the university, they have changed the dates of their program a little bit, in which we had originally wanted to work with them to participate in the research aspect of this for the blood, stool, and tick sampling that would be collected off these animals. The university has shared that they were going to have a check-in station where deer harvested on university property and city property would be open, and we were going to require that all of our deer be checked in there. That way we could track where they were harvested, how they were harvested, and we could do that sampling research aspect of it. The university had concerns about bringing deer that were harvested on city property onto university property. And so we will not be participating in that activity with them anymore. So Gary, if we'll scroll down to the bottom one. We still feel very strongly that we do not want to allow field dressing in our parks. And so through talking with the hunters, when this came up that we have on our staff, they felt like, hunters are going to be respectful. We're not going to have any challenges. They're going to participate in these hunts before, but we also didn't want to have any challenges with, Barb's crew. If we had someone who was maybe didn't have a place to dispose of the entrails. So we are going to be setting up a field dressing station. We are not going to be requiring it to be taken, require them to use this, but this is going to be presented as an option because we will not be allowing any field dressing in the parks or on public property. Were there any questions about how we are have put together this program? Were there any questions about any of the rules and regulations that we've outlined?
I just have one question. So some of these don't have fence lines or anything. So do we mark that area so the hunters know, or how do we educate them?
Yes, so that's one of the things we're still kind of talking through and working through. So it's the hunter's responsibility to know where those lines are and where those property lines are. But if there are particular areas that we think will be questionable, we will be marking it, and that will be one of the costs that we have going into this, which is the reason for the application and permit fee.
Where's the field dressing station going to be?
So the field dressing station, that's actually at the, it's across from the baseball fields. It's at the corner of, I call it Pine Street. I don't know what the technical, it's
West Park.
Northwest Division Road, in Southwest 101st Road, but it's across from Legion Field.
Yes.
Where we've had the brush dump
Where we
before.
have the brush dump. So the Public Works crew, they are going to provide a hole. And we will be managing that to make sure that we don't have any kind of smells or attractive nuisances out there, to borrow a term from Barb's crew.
I've had one question brought to me over this, other than what happens if a hunter is in a spot and he declares, I've got all the deer I want? Is that spot then just closed, or will you open it up for another hunter?
So we talked about that with our hunting crew, and as part of that pre-hunt orientation that we are going to talk to them about is if they have harvested all of the deer that they are going to hunt, and they are going to be forfeiting their area, or not forfeit, but if they're no longer going to be using it, we are going to ask that they be very open with us about that, and then we will move on to the wait list if we have one.
Okay, that's all. That's only fair. That's, like I say, I talked to lots of people, and that's the only question the hunters have had.
Will we be collecting any stool, tick, or blood samples?
We will not.
Okay.
How are we gonna set up the preferences for hunters at which location? Do they get to choose, or is it first come, first serve, or?
So at that pre-hunt orientation, they will all draw. They'll be there. They will draw out of a hat, and they will get to select where their what their designated area is.
The first person to draw picks first, and Okay.
That was the most equitable way we could think to do it.
Yep.
And since we're gonna have them all together anyways, that's even more incentive to be at that pre-hunt orientation, but it is going to be required. And we even put in our proposal or in our program details here that if you cannot attend that pre-hunt orientation, please do not apply. We are still locking down the date, but we are tentatively scheduling that for November 6th, Monday, November 6th.
And just to piggyback off of this, are we gonna have any reserves also attend that pre-hunt? Are we gonna go ahead and look for reserves just in case somebody does reach their limits? So they already have the education.
You know, with this being our first year, we're all interested in seeing how many folks are actually going to apply. And so we'll just have to kind of see how that goes. And, you know, maybe we go ahead and draw 10 reservists, and because also one of the other, you'll see in here, if you do not purchase your permit by October 21st, then we'll also move on to that wait list.
Okay.
So I think we're all kind of waiting to see what the interest is like. Some folks are like, oh, you're probably not even gonna get 35. And other folks are like, oh, I think you're gonna get, 50, 60.
What MoDOC have to say? What do they think?
I think it's hard for them to kind of judge that. They shared with us, they think that some people will apply just to have the chance to have a permit to participate in the hunt. So they think, there are people who seek out this kind of environment. It is more challenging. It is interesting for them. It is different for them. So I think they're kind of interested to see what our turnout's going to be as well.
Okay.
Could you explain real quick for those on Zoom? The only comment I've had from a resident that we discussed was if the deer doesn't drop right away, ends up on private property, what's the?
Sure. So if a deer has to be tracked and it does cross onto private property, it will be required, the hunter will be required to make contact with the private property owner to request permission to go onto their land to retrieve their animal. Now, if the private property owner does not allow the hunter to come onto their property to retrieve the animal, then it will unfortunately be the private property owner's responsibility to remove that from their property. Hopefully we can all work together on this.
Any other questions? Concerns?
Oh, and another thing just to follow up on that. There are apps that hunters have, and they are able to tell who that neighboring property owner is. But if that does become challenging, MDC does step in and help make that connection and that conversation with the private property owner.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, concerns? Need a
Move to pass said resolution.
that
There you go. Gotcha.
motion.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. These mean words tonight. Use them all up. Mayoral appointment, following mayoral appointment,
Oh,
No,
sorry,
resolution.
10.2
what I missed?
resolution right down at the bottom.
Oh, yeah, sorry. A resolution approving Children's Memorial Fund grant application. By.
Yes. A couple of months ago, the Children's Memorial Fund, the city council adopted a grant application process for them to follow. They already received one grant application. This would be the second one for this budget year. Because it was a new program, it was unbudgeted. The funds are available, but it was an unbudgeted, so it has to come before city council. As of October 1, they will be able to approve these themselves at their meeting. So I would ask, and they recommended approval of the $750 grant application to Connie Vickers and Chester Hodkins for a burial site marker for their daughter. council deems it appropriate.
Move to approve.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I'll do mayoral appointment. Appoint Kenitha Bering, a non-voting member from Whiteland Air Force Base to serve on a 3-year term expiring in June 25 on the Diversity Inclusion Commission. I understand she's been doing this as a fill-in,
She's
correct?
been filling in. Mhm.
And this just formalizes her spot on the board.
Move to approve appointment.
Osborne,
Yes.
Bentley,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Euler,
Yes.
Kushner.
Appearances not listed. Anything? Nothing. Awesome. Miscellaneous matters for the mayor or council.
I got the privilege of working with Scott Holmberg on the wall at the park, and he just wanted to thank Public Works for their assistance, helping to get that project going and almost completed. So,
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd just like to say more to the people on Zoom that we have some task force committees here that we need participation. We need residents to want to participate and join these boards. I'm working with Tree Board, Energy Sustainability. And it's kind of sad that we're not getting participation. So I'll reach out that people should apply to join those boards.
I will second that. That was, well, the last thing I was going to bring up was that we're going to, I'm going to try to figure out some sort of a recruitment drive. We've got a lot of openings and I've been working with lots of people that are thinking about it. And that's about as far as I've gotten. So this is the opportunity for you to help shape Warrensburg. Anything else? Okay, then we go to the Marcella Director of Finance report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Director's Finance Report is a recap of revenues collected in August. I'm happy to report that revenues have come in as projected and actually a little bit higher than what was originally budgeted for 22. The September numbers were down, which was kind of an indication, and we'll watch very carefully as we start fiscal year 23 to see where sales tax numbers are going to land. And hopefully they will, it's a timing issue on when the businesses report it, when the state gets it processed and submitted to us, so that's always a timeline that is a challenge to rely on the Department of Revenue to expend funds out like they're required to by the 5th of the following month, receiving those. Also included in the Director's Finance Report is the investment report that shows the investments of primarily the bond proceeds. So you will start receiving that report as we invest funds going forward. We've got funds available, and with interest rates going up, the last notes that I saw, about a 9-month window was almost 3.5% interest earnings. So we will start taking advantage of that as well as, the interest earnings on our depository that we have in our banking contract. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but going forward, I think things are going well so far.
What percentage are we at today roughly for?
The depository account is at 2% effective September 1st, and that's a fixed rate on the bank deposits. And when I received the reports for the maturity that came due, we reinvested that money at that $2.5 million at almost 3.5%. It was like 3.4% for a 9-month window. Those monies will also be invested as we enter contracts specifically to bond proceeds on the drawdowns. And so we've got that $17 million that will be expended for infrastructure. And so we'll manage that cash flow process with investments to try to maintain the most interest earnings that will give us more money for those projects with those interest earnings, and could potentially cause us to have to pay a premium because there's an arbitrage, there's a premium required. So if we're earning more in interest, so we're earning more money than we're paying for the cost of the borrowed money, we have to pay that out. And so there's a calculation involved in that, basically on an annual basis. And so we're gonna try not to do that. But we'll manage that, but we want to make sure we invest those monies for the city to earn as much as possible to give us that much more for expenditures.
I noticed you get a lot of calls about fiber and fall cleanup. Do we have a solution or how to handle that?
I can jump in. Well, the fiber issues, we continue to work on those in the Public Works Department.
I just know the staff's getting lots of calls about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so regarding the fall cleanup, I have been working with Commissioner Marr with Johnson County. And we are trying to work with Solid Waste District F, Region F, to try to pull together a bulky waste drop off. So while we will not be able to do curbside pickup, we are trying to pull together a date later in October where folks will be able to bring their bulky items to a drop off. We will continue to get that once we have it.
Yeah. And then the fiber calls, do we have any elegant solution for all the calls you're getting? It says they're going to Public Works, but you all are busy, so I mean, can we just maybe promote it more?
I think most of those calls get transferred. to Public Works.
Right, and so,
Yeah.
right, and so some of the challenge that staff shared with me is they do get transferred to Public Works, but as we all know, Public Works is very busy as well. And so the response time in getting back to that customer was a little bit of concern, because then we get multiple calls. It's like, you transferred me, I left a voicemail, that was 2 or 3 days ago. I'm not gonna call back, which I think is an exaggeration, but that's my personal opinion. And so, we tried to respond to those and that is in somewhat, out of our control because the contractor that's installing the fiber, is the one that's messing up your yard, that's creating some of those challenges that you all have heard, at times. So we tried to be compassionate and let them know that, we're working through this and we've asked them to make sure that they put everything back like it's supposed to be. And to please let us know, if it's not being, if you're not getting a response from the contractor or it's not back like it was, to reach out to us so that we can enforce those processes to replace the property. But you're right, that's a challenge going forward and staff's just trying to be, as compassionate as possible, with the customers to say, this is something to try to improve some of your services, but it'll be a process for the installation of that fiber work.
Thank you.
Do we have a listing of all the contractors that are doing the work at these different sites?
Yeah, we have an expanding list of contractors. It's not a revolving door per se, but they're having contractors that have been fired by the utility. And so then new ones come in and then we work with them on what our rules and regulations are for working in the city. And a lot of the calls that we do take, it's generally about yard restoration. And so when we make contact with the homeowner, let them know that once the contractor is done, then they'll install seed and straw, or in some cases sod, if appropriate. So for a lot of these that seems to be dragging out, it's typically the same person calling multiple times, so that can kind of inflate the number some. But generally speaking, it's almost always about yard restoration. We try to get to it when we can, and we try to be as timely in our responses as we can. So in those cases, one of our field staff will go out there, make contact with the homeowner, make contact with the utility, and then try to get something on the schedule for the restoration. If it's an oversight by the utility or something like that. But we're doing the best we can, given the constraints that we have.
Are the contractors doing a better job of not hitting water mains, not hitting the other issues?
It's improving. Just given the nature of underground infrastructure, there was an incident where a utility main was hit. And that's because it was not marked, because the utility did not know it was there. So there are times where it's just not the contractor's fault. And so mismarks are not a super common thing, but they do happen. You know, so we're working through those, but the communication has improved and I think our ordinance has got through to people as well. So there has been some improvement in that area.
Good, thank you.
I just wonder with the curbside pickup not happening this year due to budget constraints. I don't know if it's for the bird, maybe Pastor Tiller's group or something. You know, some people are gonna deposit things on the street. And they're just gonna sit there. And if maybe we could elicit their help and some volunteers to help pick up things that get set on the curb for weeks.
Yes, so one of the things that we've talked about amongst ourselves with Barb's group and Jane primarily is what's been frustrating is that we know with the nature of our population, particularly that we do have a lot of turnover and things do get left on the curb, large items do get left on the curb. And so what's been particularly frustrating is even if someone leaves something out there and they don't have a public to call and come pick that up. And so they do rely on that service that the city was providing. And so I think one of the things that, you know, being able to provide an option, a free option for someone to be able to take their bulky items to a drop off point. I think that will help us be able to have conversations with some of those folks and say, listen, you had an option, you had a free option.
Right.
And so now we're gonna enforce, because that is, you know, abandoning property in the right of way.
Do we have any recourse with landlords who, when their renters move out, if their tenants have left things on the curb?
I will kick that over to Barb.
Yeah, so your ordinances do allow you to issue tickets to tenants or property owners, which would be the landlord. And so we do make contact with them when that happens. Usually the tenants are gone, so it's the landlord at that point, or the management company. We have a flyer that Jane has put together that shows all the options for bulky waste disposal or trash disposal or yard waste disposal that are licensed within the city. So a lot of people just don't, I'm not saying our management companies, but a lot of people, if you always use Heartland, your trash provider, you don't know what the other 5 guys in town that do this. So sometimes it's just educating them with the flyer, here's the places to call and get something scheduled. I can say they're all overwhelmed as well, and so it does take a while to get a call back from them even. And so we will give them a little time to work that through, but ultimately, if they don't get on that, then yes, then we can give them a citation. Well, we have to give them a letter, give them some days to correct, and then we can turn it over to court for them to issue a citation. So it is not a quick process. That takes about 30 days before they would get a ticket.
Thank you.
Okay. Now the city manager report. And staff. Marcy.
Well, I just want to do a shout out and thank City Manager Doolin for joining me to Warrenton on Friday. Our calendar is beyond hectic. We were able to visit the Walden Hills and visit with Warrensburg resident and BBMF employee Dean Murphy. He came to council meetings to go and talked about the wall and the interest of bringing it back to Warrensburg. In order to apply, really helps your application to have visited a prior wall, and that was within driving distance. So we were able to visit that, and we're looking forward to continuing to research to make sure when we bring it back to Warrensburg, we support that event to make sure it's really effective and do it just right. The board did approve our budget at the board meeting on Thursday, so we have a balanced budget. You will notice in our budget The biggest expense we have is the renovation of 205 North Holden. And I'm really excited to announce we do have preliminary plans for the building downtown. So the ball is rolling, and a huge kudos to community development team and Jason McCartney and Bill Graves. They've been very, very patient with me as those plans. I'm pretty sure some may have been written in German. And so I'm learning as we go, and they've been very patient with me. So we hope, fingers crossed, we're able to get in there early 23.
I have a report. Last Friday, we received word from Missouri American Water. We received $1,200 in a grant program that they offer every year. So this year we applied to purchase and update our hydrant flow testing equipment. So we were awarded that grant. We're sending a check. We'll get that stuff purchased.
Good.
I provided some information in the city manager's report in more detail, but I just wanted to note for the public's sake, we have completed our annual building permit review process, and we are not recommending any change or increase of serve building permits for the coming year. This typically go into effect on October 1. So just to get the word out that we are not making any changes at this time.
I will just quickly, I know that my report was short again this week. I would like to thank Jody for stepping in and helping me out as I traveled to Warrenton with Marcy. That was a very moving experience to visit the wall that heals, and it is something I hope that we are able to bring to our community for our community. Couple things that we've been working on. Courtney and I have begun preliminary conversations about the police chief recruitment. You'll recall that interim police chief Danny Musterman's been serving in that role since the first part of the year. And so thank you for his patience and his service in that role, but it's time to get this process underway. So we will be reaching out to all of you to kind of talk through what that looks like in the next few weeks or so. The other thing, just give you a quick update on Enrico and I met to really talk about the McGuire Street improvements. You'll recall with the raise grant not coming through the last 2 years, and you heard Marcella share that we need to spend that money. And you know, we did tell the Warrensburg voters that we would do something with McGuire, and so we will be having more conversations about what our plans are with McGuire Street corridor moving forward, but be looking forward to that conversation in the next several weeks as well. I always tease that, you know, we'll get to that when things slow down, and things never slow down, but I'm very excited about the conversations that we can have coming up the next several months or so. The last thing I wanted to update you all on is you all were gracious enough to allow me to attend Leadership Missouri, that group last year. I have been working with one of my classmates on Leadership Missouri 2.0. It is a pilot program that my classmate and I she's from St. Louis area, putting together kind of a more in-depth dive in some of those topics that we cover in Leadership Missouri. And so the Missouri Chamber of Commerce has agreed to let us pilot the Leadership Missouri 2.0 program here in the city of Warrensburg. So we're very excited. Marcy's excited too. It's going to bring an additional 15 people, 15 to 20 folks to additional hotel rooms. And so we're excited to highlight our community and continue building our relationship with the Missouri Chamber, as well as our up and coming leaders throughout the state. Excited about that. All I have for this evening there.
I just need, had some people ask me, can we get an update on the indoor pool and status of, I don't know. Danielle, did you have an update on the status of when the indoor pool is going to be up and running?
So we don't have a date. We are going to be sandblasting both the indoor and the outdoor pool. So there's a bid out for that right now. But that doesn't open until September 30th. So we want to prioritize the indoor pool sandblasting. Obviously the outdoor pool can wait until next spring. But we don't have any other date. There's a tour that we need to be made One of the HVAC unit and cooling unit, have the compressor that needs to be replaced, and then, Bill has talked about a few other things. I don't know what those are yet, but we will have some more funds to spend before we get forward, but no, I did not.
Anything else? Dave? Okay, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn.